I'm not scared of the gut feeling, but I also know that if I have to sell it in afterwards, I have to do the rational thing. I was doing a lot of car advertising a couple of years back, and we always had like this, you don't buy a car for the math or the specs. You buy it for how it looks or how it feels in the curves or something like that. But you need to have that kind of, we call it the pop argument. When you're explaining it to your friends at the pub or your wife, you say, oh, but it really goes really fast on the mileage, or it's really efficient, or it's safe or something like that. But it's a feeling that you buy that makes you buy the car, I think.
Hi, everyone. This is Joshua Hoffman and Alex Gerashenko, and welcome to another episode of the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast, where we deconstruct the why and how agency owners found their success, and in Season 3 discuss how to build a community. Today, I have Kasper Sierslev. Did I say that right?
All right. Yeah, you did. It was perfect.
Perfect.
The Chief Commercial and Creative Officer of Zite, a marketing agency that helps analyze, design, implement, and run in-house agencies. Welcome, Kasper.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And happy holidays. I don't know if this will probably go off or be released in January, but we are right before the Christmas holiday, so we're saying happy holidays to you. But where I want to start off is actually some of the books you've written, and specifically I want to start off with the Copenhagen illustration book. So can you actually tell us the story behind that?
So the story is that I was supposed to write my second book about in-house agencies, and I was at a kind of difficult chapter about workflows and processes that was a bit boring, but I also needed to have my head straight. So I thought maybe I just needed some inspiration, and our office in Copenhagen is right by the sea and the Royal Palace. So I took my notebook and I went outside. And instead of writing notes, I started doing these small, naive sketches of the Opera House and the Royal Palace and so on. I got kind of, psyched about it and I thought, oh, this is fun. I only had like a black ink pen and a yellow color. So that's how the book is. And then I guess before I went home that day, I've done 10 or 15 of these small illustrations of, just things around our office, but it's really in the center of Copenhagen. And then I got really excited. I said, oh, maybe this is a small guidebook or something. And I started writing small text, and it's just my tips and tricks. It's very personal. So on back when I was at Maersk, we often had external, people coming in from around the world, from different offices, and asked me what to see and do in Copenhagen. They wanted to see the touristy things, of course, like the Little Mermaid, which is really, really boring. It's small, hence the name. And they also want to see, some of the secrets and so on. So I guess that was the idea. And then I've written down 20 things, and I add some more illustrations, and I send it off to a friend and say, hey, this is guide for small hidden things in Copenhagen. It says, yeah, I like the idea, but you draw the Royal Palace and the Opera House and all the touristy things that you can find in any guidebook. You need to add some secrets as well. So sorry, long story. So that's why, it's a kind of an ongoing project. Whenever I have time, I just relax by sketching and adding new stuff and so on. So, and I didn't write a word for the other book for a week or so. So, but it's out now.
I honestly want to keep diving into that, because I think a lot of what we're going to talk about, and I think a lot of things that you focus on and the oomph that we can get from this episode is really talking about creativity. So I think regardless of kind of what you say, I'm going to start peppering in creative questions in there. And the one that naturally came up there is, why is it important for you to get your head out of the work, especially if you're in a rut that you're supposed to be doing? So what benefited from you getting out, and then how did that go when you went back to your work?
So the thing is, it didn't benefit at all. When you often work with, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of times, you work with a project manager who says, "Oh, I'm just gonna read you this," and then when you're in the shower, your brain will probably pop something out, and you can start working on it. And for me, it doesn't work like that. It normally works really well when I sit down and start working. So if I have to write something, it works really well turning off everything and start writing. So that's the truth for me. I think I have this quote from Chuck Close, who says, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us go to work." And that's really how it is for me. And for a lot of people, I think it is about finding techniques or methods to actually being creative. But that said, I relax on developing projects or seeing an end to something like this book. I mean, it could have been just something in my notebook, but then at one point I said, "Oh, this could be fun to actually publish it or have it out there." And I mean, yeah, an expensive what do you call it? A gift for someone when you visit them. Yeah. But for me, creativity is actually hard work. I mean, I just sit down and start working, and yeah.
So I'll use a phrase that Josh uses. I want to double click on the quote. The inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up to work. Recently, I was down a rabbit hole, and I came across something that Jerry Seinfeld was saying in terms of how he wrote every single joke. And the way, I think it was him, the way he described creativity, it's like having a stallion in your mind, and a stallion that isn't tamed and isn't trained can drive you crazy. And it can run in every which direction and kick and jump. And one that is trained and let's say put into a process, you can do amazing things with. And he looks at creativity in a similar way. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this in terms of what does that mean for the rest of us just show up to work? What does that mean for you, and how do you apply it? Because I think it seems like it's been applied throughout your life and into your business, even into how you work with clients and set teams up for them.
Yeah, so I'm a big Seinfeld fan, by the way. So I like his observations, and I'm not doing stand-up, but I like the insights into people's mind. What tricks them? What are these relatable truths that you know and I know, but we never really talk about it. So I really like that. And I think it's for that part. I mean, I write a lot of these things down in my notebook or on my phone whenever I notice weird things. Okay, maybe I could use this at some point, and I look it up whenever I have to come up with an idea. For me, it's the creative process is hard work. It's sitting down and writing 100, 200 ideas or headlines, and just keep going. Don't stop whenever something is bad, not judging. And I find it really hard to come up with 100 bad ideas in a row, actually. So at one point, maybe it's number 98, there's going to be something that fuels something else. And then it's about sharing. So, and that's the most scary part. I mean, for the first, 20, 15 years of my career, it was really scary showing your bad ideas and telling them. It was like, taking all your clothes off and just say, here I am, look at me. But it's the best advice I could give anyone is just share all your bad ideas, just lay them out there. And it will, at one point, if you keep going, inspire the person you're sitting next to come up with something slightly better. So I mean, it's I call it the art of bad ideas. It's really, keep going, don't judge, just try to get ideas out there, and then there are different tools to keep going so you don't get stuck, but really don't judge. And I kind of like I like that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
No, but I think that's with Seinfeld. Then it's the first phase is getting it out there, just putting all the things on the paper, and the next phase you have to narrow it down, look at it, work with it. So if you have something that this is funny, you marked it with a small mark next to the sentence you wrote. then try to say, oh, could it be more fun if I twist this word, if I do this, if I flip it around, if I look at it from another perspective? And that's kind of like next step in the creative process. So you have like from your list of 200 shitty, can I say shitty? I say shitty ideas. It's not really a swear word, right? Ideas, you can narrow it down to maybe 20 that you can start, working on, tweaking, test out, look from a different perspective, do it as an illustration or as a big headline or as a, I don't know, musical, anything. Try to look at it from different angles. And then I think at one point you get better ideas and you share it, and somebody else says, I don't get it. And you say, okay, let's try something else. The hard part is that when you're young and you're doing this, you feel like you're being judged, like it's you, but it's really just an idea. It's not your idea. It's something in the room, and I say it, and then you work on it, say something. I say something slightly better. You say something. And at one point we have something. And of course, it's not like a big brainstorm full of 18, 20 people. It's more like a team thing with 2 or 3 people at the max, I think. That you trust, that you can, trust to say all your bad ideas.
I think a big thing there that you've been describing is there's a process to it, and so you plan out time to be creative. And it seems like a lot, from what I've seen, a lot of people think, I'm naturally a creative person and the ideas just come to you, but really there needs to be a method and a process, and in order for it to be consistent and for you to deliver results.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of processes. I don't necessarily live by them, but I try. And that's kind of also what our company is shaped around. It's like looking at all the processes that actually make an in-house agency work better. We just focus on in-house agencies that work better. And because we have several in-house agencies, we look at all the ways that we're doing things and say, in order to do better creative work, we need time set aside for it. So if we can narrow down the time we use for rework or for inventing the wheel again or something like that, we have more time for the creative part, and that's actually the whole idea. So that's what I try to do. That's try to enforce methods and technology that can enable us to be more creative.
One more question there before we kind of jump is you mentioned that you do it within a small team. And also there's like, people talk about, writers talk about like the blank page syndrome, as opposed to, and something I was watching recently, it's related to the creative process. There's a blank piece of paper and a piece of paper that said, draw a dog riding a bicycle. And so you can draw a dog riding a bicycle and go off into a creative direction much faster because you have something to focus on around it. Does that play into your creative process when you meet with your small team? Does it kind of start off as a blank canvas, or does it start off with someone prepares for that meeting with some kind of central idea that then you can iterate and brainstorm around?
When we talk about it, it starts with a blank paper. But to be honest, and don't tell anyone, I always come prepared because you need someone to say the first 20 bad ideas or something like that to get other people working. So we always come a bit prepared, having some ideas ahead. Sometimes we use AI to just spark something you can put up the walls. I mean, it's literally, we put things on the wall. We're very old fashioned. White paper, black ink, and so on. So if you can draw it badly and you can write it with a ink marker on a piece of paper and people understand it, then I'm sure it will work whenever you bring in photographers or 3D artists or whatever. So that's the idea. So of course we come kind of prepared, writing down notes and so on, say, could we try this? Could we try that? But it is really in the process when we sit together that the magic happens, I think. So it is the thing we do together, but I always come a bit prepared just to get us started, so we don't sit there and look at the blank paper.
Yeah, and just that spark.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily good ideas. It's just ideas, actually.
I hope you weren't too focused on talking about much other stuff, because I want to keep digging into the creative stuff. I think I want to keep picking your brain on this. And one thing I guess I want to kind of repeat and say again is, you mentioned kind of pulling creativity from a lot of places, and I think, at least I'll speak for myself, and maybe you're the same, but to me, creativity does really come from a lot of random places. It's almost like the more crap that you can put in your head, the more options you have to pull from different places. Because I think where a lot of times where creativity comes from is maybe something's a best practice and totally normal in one industry, but when you bring that to a new industry, no one's ever seen that before in this industry. It's a new business model. But like it's only because you knew about it in the other industry, and you never knew at the time of learning that if this was going to be valuable or not. So it is like the more, I say crap, but I have joking, like the more information and just knowledge that you can put in your head, whether it's trivia, whether it's random, whether it's like, some test that you had to learn in school for a purpose, you start to collect all those little data points and you start to put them in this line together that starts to come up with this, solution that you're coming up with. So I don't know if you have anything to say that. I have a bunch of questions, but
I totally agree. So, I mean, I don't think inspiration is for amateurs at all. I think inspiration is really important. You have to visit places you haven't been before. I love going to Southern Europe or Japan or something and look at the advertising, look at the art, look at the streets and everything, read magazines I haven't read before, hear new music and something like that. Not necessarily to do something now. It's just to fill up, as you say, fill up all the brains with weird things. And at one point you connect them. Creativity is really, connecting. I think it's like, yeah, there's this Picasso image where he builds a bull from a bicycle seat and a what do you call it? The brain. Yeah. And I think that's perfectly illustrates, that is creativity. It's putting things together, known things together in a new way. So what I mean with, and I didn't invent the quote, so the inspiration is for amateurs. I think it's more like, don't sit and wait for inspiration. It's a process. Get going, show up to work and start developing your ideas. Because I think inspiration is super important in what you do. Look at all, and as you said, from different industries. Don't look at if you're doing advertising, don't necessarily sit and look at the creative advertising festivals, show reels or something like that. I mean, you should probably also do that, but look at something else. Go. I like, yeah, you mentioned Seinfeld. I like to do a lot of, dig into stand up, because I think that's really, really, yeah, well, of course, fun, but also inspirational in the way that they turn things around and look at human insights. And I think that's where I find most ideas, is that connection with people.
We talked about having a process, right? Does having a creative process ever become a hindrance?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a bold statement, but I mean, I sometimes I used to play the bass and that I have behind me. So and it's and I used to play jazz, and in jazz it's very much standard. So the song, but you can come in and you can play, you can jam on top of it, but it is the same song. And I think if you have the process, there's no hindrance in going in and out of that melody, so to speak, and play around, as long as you know that you can always come back and say, okay, now I'm stuck, I'm going to try a new trick to get my brain going. So I don't think it'll be ever, ever be an issue having a process, so to speak.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And when I was in college, I think that's when my creative mind really started. And I used to have a lot of pride of this really unstructured thinking, and I loved how my brain was thinking, but it never went anywhere. And the quote that I think it's actually a book, and it said, "What got me here won't get me there." I had so much pride in having this creative jumbleness in my head, but like that never resulted in something. And I knew that I had to almost dump that unstructuredness and become more structured to actually squeeze something out of that creativity. So that's just something I thought of there. We're going to keep diving.
Josh, Before you go off of that, it was on a previous call, you were mentioning that, and I really like this, the idea of if you have this spark, this idea, or this motivation to do something, the faster you create a process around it, the more likely it is that it could actually happen. Yeah, can you go into that? Because I thought that jives with this conversation.
A lot of what I obsess over is like the idea of motivation. And Kasper, take this any way you want or skip it. But to me, there's a lot that goes behind creating a discipline, and I think it's 2 steps before that. It's one, being self-aware about what is happening, and then 2 is finding the motivation to get there. And what I think Alex is talking about is that motivation has a half-life, right? The day after you get that motivator, it feels like it's less valuable the next day. So you can actually, right when it's hot and heavy, right when something happens that really motivates you, it's at that moment that if you create your discipline at that moment, that's going to maximize your potential of actually getting to your goal, as opposed to being like, you know what, I don't know, girls.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's very much about. And that's why you need all the bad ideas in the beginning, because it's difficult to ignite that spark from a piece of paper or a brief or something like that. You need to have something, all the, I say bad ideas, but all the list of ideas get going, and then you find the inspiration in something that's fun. It shouldn't be, the standard, this is an ad or this is a new way of doing a commercial or something like that. But it's in those things that you recognize something that can spark the motivation and actually keeps you going all night on the fun stuff, and hopefully, I think that's also what inspires people to buy more creative stuff, is that they can feel that this is something that you actually put your heart into and your mind into. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that actually, but
I'll help you move forward, because again, I just love this topic. When I write, again, all these crazy ideas in my head, and I got to get it on paper. And if I'm writing like a blog post or something that I run into a lot is that I write this paragraph and I'm trying to rewrite it, and I'm trying to write it so it's proper to whoever the reader is. And a lot of times what I notice I do is I actually take a sentence that I really, really liked, and I have to remove it. It just sure, I love that sentence by itself, but like it doesn't fit in the whole scheme of the paragraph. So the question that I'm getting to is, how do you judge like a good idea versus a great idea? Because it's the great ideas that you want to take and move forward, but they're jumbled up with all these good ideas that you have to sort through in your head and actionable and all that. So how do you judge a good idea versus a great idea?
That's a great question. I think for a lot of what I do, it's also looking at, is it campaignable? Can you do more? Does it? Sometimes you have a really great idea, but it doesn't really, sparks a wave around it or something like that. It's just one good idea or something like that, and it can be amazing, but that will, in my opinion, at one point, end up in trouble, because you only have that one amazing headline or that amazing image that you can use, but it's really not. You can't do 2 or 3 or something like that. So, and sometimes it's okay, but most of the time you need to have something, maybe a slightly weaker idea that actually can, be folded out in a lot of different elements for when I'm talking advertising here. And then you, in my experience, you also find sometimes the great idea on the outskirts of the less great idea. So sometimes it's like when you do that outdoor advertising and you had a decent creative idea in the beginning as the overall concept, and then you do outdoor and you say, oh, this is a really fun guerrilla idea, or this is a really fun outdoor thing you can actually do, because you have that really great concept that was built on something, an insight or something like that. So
it's almost like a connection. You take the ideas and then, I guess, evaluate them against what the goal is and see which ones measure up.
Yeah. This is the part where I don't have a process. So it's really gut feeling about, is it good? Is it bad? And And I think that's actually a problem I talk about sometimes. It's that whole selling in that, you probably know when you hit gold, right? You know this is a good idea. And then sometimes you just want to, show it and say, ha, look, this is great. But sometimes most of the times, the client haven't been there and they're not that experienced in recognizing, good from great or something like that. And this is where I have made the most mistakes in my life. That's just showing that and say, "Oh, look at this! It's amazing." And they say, "Yeah, but no, right?" And then having, what I've learned, and I'm still learning, is to do kind of reverse engineering on that idea, trying to take people all the steps back. Say, you wanted this, knowing that the outcome is going to be this one. And I just say ad before the simplicity of things. This one ad is what I'm going to end up, but I'm going to go all the way back and engineer it and say, why did I come up with that headline? Why did we choose this image? Why did we do that? And then as the presentation goes on, it of course ending up in that one. But it's really difficult, especially, and I'm talking in-house a lot, in-house agencies, doing that because you sit right next to people, you go to lunch with them every day. So giving them that big agency presentation where you said, now sit down, now I'm going to tell you something, it seems weird sometimes. You say, okay, we just came out of the other meeting, show me what you got. And then a lot of times you fall into that trap and you show them you show them the thing right away, and they don't get all the
value, really.
The value.
It sounds almost like, and I could be way off base here, but it kind of sounds like a sales process, right? Someone wants to know, like, what do you say? And you show them the product and the price before telling them the value and how it connects to their world.
It is. I mean, but I think the sales process of creativity is really neglected. It's where I think 50% of the great ideas die is because they're not sold in. And now we were talking about creativity, but it's really sad to watch how, you have a great idea and you just kind of send it on an email or say, oh, by the way, I have this idea, but maybe you like it, and so on. And if you're not in that mode of actually buying a great idea, it's difficult.
It's kind of like the you would have had to be there statement.
It hurts. Yeah. It hurts when someone turns down your what you think is this excellent idea. You mentioned your gut feeling and sometimes going to your gut feeling. So I just want to ask a quick question on that. And I do little dollar bets, like, I do sports betting and I do these little dollar bets and I record every single bet that I take. And what I do is I have a column that says, did I make the bet with my head, my heart, or my gut, or gut? So it can be all three.
Yeah.
And I do that to actually bring awareness towards my gut feelings, because I think people use that phrase very often, but they almost don't know what it is. And sometimes there's obvious gut decisions and we can point to that. We say that was a gut decision, but a lot of decisions we make, it's not as easy to identify, how our gut's feeling about something. Me doing this thing on the betting side, I'm trying to learn how to listen to my gut, and I'm losing money, so I'm not doing well right now. But how do you, for lack of a better question, how do you read your gut feeling?
Well, I mean, if you want to go scientific on it, it's like all, the whole Kahneman thinking fast and slow. I mean, 95% of our decisions are made with our system one, our guts, our intuition. We've seen this a billion times before, and we don't really know why. It's just how it is. You hear something, you run up, you get your pulse running and so on. I think it's 95%. I mean, I'm doing it very populistic now, but and then 5% is actually, you can't gut feel math. I mean, not, maybe you can, but I don't know anyone who can do that. But feelings, reactions to something, that's gut feeling anyway. So it's just, I don't know where I'm going, but there is something about trusting that instinct, because it is what's got us to here as you said before, maybe that won't go take us the next step, but it is what took us from the savannah down from the trees or wherever, as a human race is trusting our gut and feelings and seeing things that we can't really explain at first, that we have to analyze afterwards. So I'm not scared of the gut feeling, but I also know that if I have to sell it in afterwards, I have to do the rational thing. I was doing a lot of car advertising a couple of years back, and we always had like this, you don't buy a car for the math or the specs. You buy it for how it looks or how it feels in the curves or something like that. But you need to have that kind of, we call it the pop argument. When you're explaining it to your friends at the pub or your wife, you say, oh, but it really goes really fast on the mileage, or it's really efficient, or it's safe or something like that. But it's a feeling that you buy that makes you buy the car, I think. So
yeah, and now I want to take all this creative talk that's in your head, and I want to get into this community aspect that we try to promote on this episode or in this season. And obviously, one big community for you is your employees. So to kind of borrow a lot of what we were saying with the creative side, how do you promote that within your firm?
So two ways. So first of all, we are kind of a community of in-house agencies. So we have different agencies that work only with one client, but they have a community. So all the social media managers, all the copywriters, the art directors, they have a community among them. So that means, because here in Scandinavia, in-house agencies are not that big. It's typically 10, 15 people at the most. So if you're the copywriter, chances are you have one copywriter colleague within the company, and that's it. So if you want to, bounce things off or something like that, you don't have that community. But having more agencies where people actually, know each other, they can test things, they can ask, how do you do this? So that's one way we try to promote it. The other way is when we talk creativity, where a lot of these small companies, they are set up, small, they're not that small, but they're set up to serve a purpose on the everyday content creation, creativity level. So we don't have, the big rock star creative people at our agencies. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, sorry, but if they're listening in, we have really good craftsmen who can do great creative work, but they won't probably come up with, and not a lot of them come up with the next Cannes Lion award-winning thing. So that's why we have this community here of external creative people that we bring in to these co-creation sessions. And that's actually where I think this conversation should go, is like, if you're a small agency or you're a small in-house agency, don't be afraid to bring in people. It could be film directors or external creative people, and ask them to sit with you and work together, do that black ink on white paper ideas in a room for 2 days. You can afford buying 2 days for of a creative guy or two creative people to have them in the room and actually learn from them and bounce idea off. And I kind of like that community thought of it, bringing people together to come up with ideas. And then the rest of it is just process, methodology, right, too.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's something that we've seen in interviewing a lot of agency owners, is that they work with a lot of other agencies. It's one of those industries where in most industries you have your company, then you have your contractors, your vendors, your clients. In the marketing community, you usually work with other marketing agencies. So how can you dive further into that? How do you go about bringing other people in? Are you bringing in consultants from other marketing agencies, or are these people that you kind of already have earmarked that are individuals that you usually bring in?
So most of the time it's like 3 levels. So we have our own creative people who travel around, the travel team, we call them, great name. Yeah, I came up with that. Very creative. No, they travel between the different agencies and actually help them out on creative tasks. So that's one part. The other one is just people we know. So that's small boutiques or creative teams that you can hire in that want to do this. They think it's fun to go back to the creative side. It's not the big full service agencies, of course, that want to sell their best creatives at this level, but you can get a lot of, I wouldn't say has-beens, but people who tried like me, people who tried being at big agencies and actually, kind of like the idea of working with the creativity and the idea and not necessarily the whole being in a big machinery. And then, of course, the last one is for specialties. If you are doing a new app or social media in a new way, it doesn't make sense to bring all those experts in. If you're a small in-house team with, I don't know, 5, 8 people, one of them should probably not be that specialist who only work with this type of thing. Then it makes a lot of sense to have someone who works with 20 different clients to say, this is how you should do it. This is the way where we do it with bigger clients and so on. So, but that's
very nice.
It's very close to a normal agency setup where you bring it in. But
yeah, that's great. As we're talking about this, I want to bring clarity to maybe someone who's listening. The somewhat maybe ambiguous to them currently is the actual structure of your company, because I think it's very interesting and unique. I've seen it a lot in the development space, but I haven't heard about this in-house. Essentially, it's a outsourced, managed, but in-house agency. Can you talk about your model? Because I think it's very interesting how you've positioned it.
Yeah, so we start. I come from advertising agencies, where I was the first 15-ish year in my career, very traditional way, and then I got a bit tired of it, and I applied to a job at Maersk, which is a big transportation shipping company, and I realized we were doing a lot of the same stuff all over the world. So I said, why don't we bring someone in? Or maybe let me do it, build this in-house agency that can just, not the top creative stuff, but just, manage the basics and so on. And that model we kind of took to build this Zite agency, as we call it, or just Zite, is that we utilize all the processes and the tools, that everything that we can reuse. So it's really to reuse the models, the technology, the methods, and so on, so we can run efficient and creative in-house agencies at a lot of different companies. And it's also, our employees, and I can say that because we just did an employee survey, they really love this model, because working in-house, sometimes you can grow out of that role. There's no place to go. But here we can actually say, maybe you want to try another agency, you want to move to another company, work with something else. So that's one possibility for people. The other one is maybe you want to be, the head of that agency and we can talk about that. That's maybe a 2-year plan or something like that, where we can develop together how you should do this and learn more. And the other one is, of course, that community among the people who work there, because you are very isolated in wherever you sit. If you're in an in-house agency, you're kind of the only creative guy in a big, engineering company or something like. It's also creative to be engineering, but you know what I mean. Or is it? No. So that means that you have you have peers you can talk to. Imagine having to bounce off ideas, and the other people you can bounce them off with are the programmers or something like that. It's going to be tough. So that's the idea of the company, to actually take the best of both worlds, taking the best of the in-house, where you're close to the client or the customer, and the products and tools and so on, and you are very easy to you also get the data back from what you're doing, because you're sitting right there down the hall. but also taking the best from the outside world, where you can bring in the creativity that you need, the peers, the community, and so on. So that's our model right now. We haven't. There's not a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of competition, but it's more like traditional advertising agencies or in-house agencies. We don't know really anyone who's doing it quite like us. So maybe it's a really bad idea.
No, I think it's great. And I think it's I've seen it in the development space, like having like augmented teams or teams that work for a specific client. But I haven't seen it in the marketing space. And coming from the development side myself, I think it's a great model. And I think it's awesome what you're doing and how it's structured. I think it provides a lot of value to your clients and to the employees.
Yeah, but so do I. Actually, I think it's a great model. But you always wonder when you're the only one doing something. You know, either you've seen something that they haven't, or it's a really bad idea.
No, I'm glad, Alex. I'm glad you brought that up because I know we spend so much time in creativity, but I do think it's such a unique model that it's worth pointing out, and obviously that goes into a lot of what we talked about in the creativity side. A few questions I ask at the end. If you had to teach something to other marketers, what would it be?
That would be process. I mean, I struggled with the whole self-doubt thing and redoing thing, and I had this love-hate thing with creativity for the first many years of my creative work. Where I loved it when I came up with something, and whenever I had to start with something, I said, "Oh, maybe that was the last one. Maybe I'm yeah, I don't. Maybe there's nothing in there now." So, and since I kind of discovered, ways of working with creativity, it helped a lot. And now I'm just trying to teach and tell everyone, learn your methodology for creativity.
I had a few questions on imposter syndrome. I wish we had more time, but maybe if there's another episode, I'd like to get into that because I think that's kind of what you're hinting at right there.
Yeah.
How can you guys work with other marketing agencies, or what services can you partner with other agencies? So in other words, what do agencies tend to reach out to you for?
So agencies mostly reach out either to work with us, be the creative partner that we bring in. So that's more like small creative teams or boutique agencies or something like that, with a small teams that say, "Oh, can we be part of that?" So that's one thing. The other one is the process, the ways of working that we actually help a lot of both in-house agencies with. So we just help them set everything up, and then we say, "Fine, now you can do it yourself." So that's mostly in-house agencies. I don't think we've ever helped an external agency do that. But if you call me, I'll help you. So
then let's flip this question kind of around and say, if a client asks, "Can you do this?" and it's a service you don't currently provide, how do you typically handle the request? And by the way, I think it's worth just mentioning why we're asking these questions. And I might have mentioned this last time, but again, our entire goal with this podcast is not just to kind of say goodbye after this podcast and awesome, that was a good episode, but we want to build this community with our guests. And like Alex was saying earlier, right? Like marketing agencies share other services with other marketing agencies. And it's this really cool thing that happens in this space. So what we're trying to do is say, "Hey, look, we have these guests, or we have these marketing agencies that we interviewed. How can each other help each other and get referrals pumping in all over the place?" So again, the question was, when a client asks, "Can you do this in something you don't provide?" how do you typically handle that request?
We pass it on. So, I mean, we often look at the whole, agency world as a house. And on top, you have the really creative stuff, the specialist agencies. And we don't do that because we don't know anything about that. We are like process and creativity within the framework agency. So there's a lot of things where we need specialists and where we work with other agencies in that field. And sometimes it's the client that we work for that bring them in, and then we just provide the work structure for who's doing when, I guess it's called. And so, I mean, anything from web development to, SEO optimization, social media, we're more the craftsmen normally working with that.
No, I think I love that. If you were listening to this show, what topics would you like us to cover?
I think creativity is definitely one of the things I'm mostly into right now, methods, but I also like the whole community things, but that's more because I think it's a really interesting way that people are, not necessarily a big agency, but they have like connections. Like you've seen it in the film production industry for many years, where you have your lightning grip guys, you have your sound guys, and they kind of shuffle around with different, and an agency is not that big. It's maybe just, I don't know, 10 people or 5 people or something like that, but they have like a lot of people they can bring in for different things, and they know how to work together. So I that's what I like about your podcast, is the whole community thing, that you actually try to help your guests and your listeners to work together. I think that's our, I don't know, mantra. It's called Better Together. So it is about being better with the people that we work with. So.
We appreciate that, and we have a lot of things kind of cooking up right now that we'll send to you shortly. But we have a lot of plans for it. Like, our goal is, we're taking this pretty seriously, and we want to get you guys business and everything. We think that's just a cooler podcast and system and everything. Community. Two more questions. Are you guys looking to hire any positions right now?
Right now we're looking for project managers. We always look for project managers. Those are the ones who need to understand our model and our processes. So that's the people that we like to bring in. And to be fair, we like to bring them in kind of young and teach them. So that's what we're currently looking for, like an open position. But we're also always looking for creative people, or videographers, or motion guys, or people that we can bring in the travel team.
And then the last question, and maybe my favorite, any books, podcasts, or newsletter recommendations? It can be in marketing and advertising. It doesn't have to be business, doesn't have to be anything you want.
I have one. It's called The Abstract I think it's on Netflix, and one episode, especially with a German graphic designer, illustrator called Christoph Neumann, who does a lot of the New Yorker covers and so on. And he has one episode where he talks. I mean, that's where I stumble across that inspiration is for amateurs thing. So he really talks to me about that. So Christoph Neumann, look him up if you don't know him. But he's amazing.
Awesome. And as we come up to the end of the episode, I just want to give you an opportunity to mention how people can find you and anything else you'd like to end with.
They can Google our book. It's called Win-Win House. So yeah, I like this. I have
Please, thank you. Yes. Yeah. I had a question about that I didn't get to, so I'm glad you got to say that.
So I think that's .com. So that's the easiest part, and then they can find us there. Or otherwise, we're called Zite.agency. But read the book.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those of you, if you learned something new on this episode, please consider giving us a like or a follow so we can continue getting the highest quality guests. And as always, thank you for listening, Kasper. I enjoyed this so much. I love the topic, and I'm glad we could truly dive in as far as we did. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you, Alex. Really, really, really enjoyed being here.
Thanks for listening to the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I just want to thank our sponsors, DevNoodle. DevNoodle provides marketing agencies with the ability to offer their clients unlimited website design, build, and management services with fixed monthly plans. If website design, development, and maintenance is holding your agency back from growing, please reach out to us at devnoodle.com, where we make websites easy for you and easy for your clients. devnoodle.com.